Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome to this, your Monday night Formula One fan show live, your regular pit stop if you're an F1 fan, new, old, or returning to the sport. We have it all for you, and as always, it's live, and we welcome your points, your opinions on a race that delivered the first Red Bull 1 and 2 in 6 years. We had Bottas versus Russell, with Bottas just edging it, Steve. Well, love to get your thoughts on that battle. Hamilton still MIA, is that fair to say? And anything else that you wonderful Formula One fan show people want to bring to our live chat. And as always, you can get involved and appear on the show if you should so want to. So that is the intro. You can find this on podcast platforms. If you're heading out of the house, just finding it late at night, you think, oh, you know what, on the way to work, I'll give that a listen, or however you want to do it, you can find us on podcast platforms. And don't forget, hit subscribe, join us every single Monday. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the true aficionado of the HDR media world. A song that sounds so good on car stereos is, of course, Stephen Thompson, our aficionado. Stephen, it is so good to finally be back in our Monday night rightful slot after a couple of, here, there, and everywhere sort of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a bit all over the place, hasn't it? So it's nice to be back in normal, settled down, getting back into the swing of things. The season's underway. It's going very well. So
sun is shining. The San Miguel is tasting lovely. I believe that's your tipple of the choice this evening. Is that correct?
It is indeed, but I've left it in another room. So well, it'll be there when I get back.
Myself and the people at home will not mind you nipping off to get the San Miguel. That some things in life need to be savoured, particularly when they're cold, not room temperature.
It's all good. I'll get it when I get back. It's fine.
We're now 2 minutes into the show, Steve, and I thought we'd introduce a new segment to the Formula One fan show live world, the Neil Moles sweepstake. At what point will Neil Moles appear on today's show? Right now, this is not a game as in he's there and I'm going to wait for the magic number. He is not here yet. Again, not here. So, Steve, please go first in this sweepstake this week. What minute do you think we'll see Neil?
I'm going to guess the 6th minute.
Sixth minute. Okay. I'm going to guess. I'm actually going to go a little bit higher than 6 minutes. And I'd love to have you guys and girls in the chat as well. Let me know what you believe the number to be. I'm going to go 8 minutes in today's show. We will finally be able to press the Mr. Positivity theme tune. Metal Jace has gone for 5. So he thinks Neil will be here in 2 minutes. That is incredibly optimistic, I do feel. And we have no prior information, do we, Steve? Just to clarify that at home. Nope. We haven't been told by Neil. He's late, got this, got that. We just literally, I thought, he's often late, and that's fair enough. He's a working man. He works very hard. He's away at hotels a lot of times, as we know. But I thought, what, let's make a bit of fun with it. Let's have a bit of sweet steak. And let's see who can take the prizes come the end of the year. So 8 minutes.
This could replace bemoaning Bottas.
Well, it could, because Bottas suddenly can drive. Let's start with Bottas then. Bottas and Russell and Bottas. Bottas edges it. Did that surprise you, Steve?
Russell got it.
Russell.
Yeah, because last year you wouldn't have thought you'd have an Alpha fighting a Mercedes. It's incredible. It was really, really good. Bottas has been doing very well this season. He's got a decent car under him. He's out of the pressure of Mercedes. Obviously, we know the Mercedes is not a fantastic car. Russell seems to be getting more out of it now than Lewis. Again, I wouldn't thought I'd be saying that this early in the season. And there was a brilliant fight between Russell and Bottas. A lot of people getting flashbacks of 2021 where they ended up in the barriers together. And there's a lot riding on it, because this is the guy that replaced Bottas in that top team. And, he's having to fight for it in, both are midfield cars, really, I think you could say after that. But
what's going on
for the pair of them?
At Mercedes. Let's branch off into that world because James Parker comes up with evening chaps. Good evening, James. That's surely Lewis's season over already. What's going on with Lewis? Some people on Reddit I was reading are saying they feel that Lewis is just mailing it in. It's almost like Alan Prost, how he left was it Ferrari in his last season there.
Yeah,
all sorts of echoing vibes. But how are you seeing it? Because this is the greatest of all time, arguably. and his detractors are having a party. His supporters are concerned.
It's odd, isn't it? I mean, yeah, the Mercedes are struggling, but Russell's getting that car to fourth on the fourth in the race, and Hamilton didn't make any progress at all.
No.
I think he finished where he started. Sorry.
Lapped by Verstappen.
Lapped by Verstappen. Imagine that last year, the Titanic battle these two guys were having. And suddenly you're 4 races in, and
that's a laugh.
If I was Verstappen, I'd be smug, you know. But I think, and I like how after he lapped Hamilton, they cut to Christian Horner in the Red Bull pit wall, and I think he was trying to don't look too smug, focus on your work. I'll be looking smug if it was me.
Oh mate, if I was Verstappen, I'd be like, like Cruz. I'd be like,
yeah. But yeah, the season started pretty well for Hamilton. He got that 3rd place. That was a bit fortuitous because the Red Bulls double DNF, of course. But since then, he's had no pace, it seems. He's not really been able to charge forward. Russell is the only driver left on the grid now who's finished in the top 5 in every single race. So his consistency is absolutely phenomenal. And it does, I wouldn't say it leaves a lot of question marks over Lewis Hamilton, but maybe over his mentality, if this is going to continue during the season, if Mercedes can't make inroads.
It's really gone wrong, isn't it, this year? It
really has. I know that this new concept of car they've trialed with the very minimal side pod, or virtually non-existent side pod design. That's a bit of a gamble, whether that is a cause of this. But the porpoising those guys are having, Russell has actually been saying he's been suffering from chest and back pain because of the levels of porpoising that this Mercedes has got compared to other cars. But you see other cars porpoising as well. Like the Ferrari, you can see it bouncing down the straights, but not to that extreme. And that's a hell of an issue to sort out. And I don't know. I think although I'm confident Mercedes will make inroads at some point. They are Mercedes. These guys have dominated the sport for the best part of 10 years. Other teams are going to be out of sight by this point. If they carry on like this, Red Bull are, they're only 4 races in, but Red Bull, apart from their reliability issues, have got a very rapid car. Ferrari are incredible and they're consistent. Mercedes are going to end up with this battle with a rather resurgent McLaren. So
yeah, Toto Wolff, he said after the race, he offered us. He said, really bad. He got squeezed by the Alpine. The other 2 cars undercut him. There's just no overtaking when you're on a DRS train. I think we saw with George where the car can drive if you're in free air, but we are not good enough for a world champion, not worthy for a world champion. We just need to fix the car. And of course, I had that exchange on the radio. Is it a simple case of Hamilton is not a mid-car driver? He's forgotten those tools to navigate them, whereas George is very much built those over the last couple of years.
Lewis is incredibly lucky because throughout his entire F1 career, since he was driving at McLaren in 2007, he's had a car capable of winning races. Granted, the 2009 McLaren was absolutely atrocious. That's probably the worst car he's driven, apart from so far this one. More often than not, even sort of 2010 to 2012 era, McLaren was still competitive and he could still compete at the front, win races. He had a sort of building year with Mercedes, and then from 2014 onwards, it's been domination. So yeah, he's not used to running around fighting for 9th, 10th, 11th place. He's not used to going out in Q1. He's not used to going out in Q2. So he's used to Q3s, fighting for poles, fighting for a podium and a win. Whereas, like you say, George, this is the first time he's ever had a proper chance in a car that can, obviously not give him wins, but certainly he can compete for decent positions for.
And it's a different style of racing, isn't it? When you've got to navigate those midfield cars to only navigating the very best in, say, the Red Bull, because that's all they've had for the last couple of years. It's a very different style of racing you've got to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we saw that yesterday. He was stuck for most of the race behind Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon, who, by the way, is doing absolutely fantastically in that Williams. Those two, as soon as they got DRS, they enabled DRS really late for some daft reason. But when they enabled DRS, they just couldn't get past. Albon was using his car so well, he could, even though Gasly and Hamilton behind were in DRS range, Albon was just very well placed. He could defend that position. Hamilton couldn't get past, and it was a train. And he just kept trying the same thing, and it wasn't working. Same with Bottas and Russell further up the field. Bottas was quicker than Russell, and he just still couldn't get past. Imola is tricky to overtake on anyway. And then you get in that DRS train like Hamilton and Gasly. And you go nowhere.
As a new fan of the sport, I'm going to ask the question: what kind of team in season? Probably nothing. But once this season's complete, what can a team do with that car? Is it a case of you rip up the specs, you start completely again? Is it a case of you make a few tweaks? Because the car is not good for either driver, but particularly not your number one. So what can a team do in the summer or the close season?
Well, there's no in-season testing. So I think it depends. What they do at the end of the season will depend, or towards the end, will depend on quite heavily how this season goes. So if they do start to make inroads and they can close up the gap to the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull, they could go for an evolution of this year's car for next year. Because teams have tried in the past ripping up their scrapbook and their plans and starting again. McLaren tried it after 2012. They ended the season with the fastest car. Button won in Brazil. They ripped it up and went for an entirely new concept in 2013, and it didn't work. They didn't get a win. I don't think they got a podium that year either. That was Button and Perez. And then it was sort of downhill from there. But I don't know. It's tricky. I reckon this car is going to see some heavy overhauls, and it won't look like it does now. Definitely towards the end of the season.
What would you, as a long-term fan of the sport, want them to do?
I don't know. I mean, the slight bias in me is enjoying that it's someone else, fighting for a win. That you got Ferrari up there. The Formula One fan me wants to see as many teams up there fighting for a win as possible. I'd love to see 10 teams fighting for a win, but you're obviously never going to get that. I'd like to see a proper evolution of that car for next year. They know where the car works well, which isn't really a lot of places. They know where it doesn't work. So, and it's Mercedes. Like I say, they've had so much time now dominating this sport. They know how to fix problems. They've got a lot of technical expertise, but they've lost a few good engineers as well. Aldo Costa's left, and there's a few other top engineers that have left either to Red Bull or elsewhere. And that's costing them, evidently.
And it's costing Hamilton big time. Right, we've gone through 2 of our 5 talking points. We've got title battle closes up. We've got look ahead to Miami and a second poor race for Carlos Sainz. But first of all, it's time to press that button.
Wake up to the wake up to the money, turn me right on. You look like you got dressed with no lights on. I Superman that spin like a cyclone. Fit check spin like a cyclone. Wake up to the money, turn me right on.
Yeah, but we're crap. We're not going to dominate any team.
I feel that's come full circle. That end clip was true, now not true, now back to being true. Here he is.
Again, aren't we?
Yep,
we're a few games without a win now, aren't we? They are draws, but
8 games. We're just come full circle, like the wheel arch of a Formula One car. Neil, welcome in. How are you doing?
not too bad.
Rushed in?
Yeah,
Where you been today?
Lakenheath.
Lakenheath. For those that are listening, Neil is still in his overalls. For those watching, that is not poor dress sense, is it, Neil? That's your work uniform.
It certainly is.
Good man.
Well,
Nice
it could be either, but
Hey, maybe if bright yellow's your thing with silver stripes, then you rock it, my man.
as the saying goes, don't knock it till you've tried it.
Absolutely. I've got the body shape for a bright yellow with silver stripes. But anyway, good to have you with us. We've been talking about Hamilton and what they need to do with that car. Before we move on to another topic, have you got any thoughts on that matter?
Mercedes have got some struggles on their hands. It's not a nice car to drive, and well, Russell seems to be getting more of it at this moment in time. But whether it will be just a brief period, a little blip, because I hope it's the same for poor old Sainz as well. And but Russell's doing. I like what was mentioned from Rosberg earlier in the weekend, that he hasn't really proved himself yet. He hasn't really done anything to say he's out and out worthy of being there. But he's just done all weekend. He just outperformed Hamilton like he did last, and yeah, he had to sort of change his words.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not been a great time for Hamilton. I read it that he's just the driver that doesn't look at it this year. Do you think that's any true?
Maybe. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think he is up for it. The car's terrible. I guess Russell, being at Williams, is more used to a terrible car anyway.
Mhm.
But maybe Lewis is having a little bit of nose put out of joint. He hasn't had this for a few seasons now. The last one would be at McLaren when he decided to part from them because things weren't going very well.
Yeah.
So he's got a little bit of a struggle, and I think he'll dig deep. His words have been that, let's build as a team and move on from here. So
I'm desperate for him to come back in. I love Hamilton. I think I think he's the best driver of all time. I've said it. I'll say it. I'll keep saying it. And I'm desperate for him to come back and particularly, shut his detractors up, as it were. You mentioned Sainz there. What's going wrong with Sainz then? Because you've got second poor race from Sainz on the agenda. Neil, you're new to the chat. We'll let you roll with that one first. What's going on?
I think after watching an interview, I believe Ricardo thought he had been hit into Sainz, in which he did the final piece. But prior to that, he just clipped the curb and he just slid off into him, tagged the rear end, and Sainz was a passenger. And I think via the interview, when he watched it back, Ricardo felt a little bit sorry to a fellow driver that, to make a fellow driver have a race that ended up that way, really. He wouldn't like it himself, and no other driver would. And he didn't say sorry as such, but I believe that's what he was implying.
Yeah. And how have you seen the Spaniard season so far, Steve?
It started off so well, didn't it? Second in Bahrain, was he third at the next race, and then 2 retirements. So he's still in a solid place in the championship, but he's lost so much ground.
He's managed 1 full race lap in the last 2 events.
Yeah, 2 retirements in a row. Australia, he pushed too hard. He lost the car. Yesterday wasn't his fault. He was just wrong place, wrong time, which obviously is just bad luck. That happens a lot in Formula 1. You could say the same thing to Alonso, really, getting tapped by Schumacher. I do feel bad for him because he's obviously he's a very talented driver. He finished ahead of Leclerc last year in the standings, just. And there's a very good driver in there, and he is quick. And on his day, and this year he will get poles, he will get race wins. I'm confident. I'm sure of that. But he needs to iron out the little creases from back in Australia, those sort of things, and get his mentality. Don't let it affect his mentality, because he has got, at the end of the day, he's got that car, which is still the best car on the grid. I maintain that. And it's all there for him. He just needs it all to line up. I think he did very well, though, in the sprint race. He started 9th, he finished 4th. So that was really good, that we saw what he can do there. So just do that over a proper race distance and you'll be fine.
What's holding him back?
Pointing.
What's holding him back? Is it the car? Purely the car?
No. That car, look what Leclerc's doing in that car. Yesterday was not.
We'll come to that.
Leclerc, but
absolutely.
Look what Leclerc has been doing in that car. He's won 2 out of 4 races this season. He's been on pole twice, I think, this season, Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
Fastest lap in 3 of them. So Carlos Sainz, he's got that car. I think it's just getting the mentality right. He can do it. He just needs to believe in himself and don't kick himself so much. That's going to affect his mentality even more.
So consistency issue then, Neil.
Yeah, I think he's just been unlucky the last couple of races. Bar that, Australia was a bit silly, but he put that one behind him. And then he was given a 2-year contract extension, supposed to be a bit of a morale boost. Then he struggled the early part of the weekend, and now we know what happened to him in the end. So
absolutely,
that was unlucky, wrong place, wrong time. I can't see it happening too many more times this season, and I just think he needs to just go again, really, and it'll work out for him.
Neither of you have put this on the list, but I want to bring it to the party. Aston Martin this weekend. I want to discuss both drivers for Aston Martin. I'll give you one each. Steve, Steve, we'll start with you with Lance Stroll. Defended well to secure 10th, maintaining his record of finishing in every race this season and never lower than 13th. A guy that had a lot of stick over the last period of time. You insert your own time frame. He's having a great season so far, and Aston Martin as a whole this weekend. What are your thoughts?
He's had a whole lot of stick since he entered the sport in 2017 because of money. He'll always get that stick. He'll always be branded a pay driver.
But he's consistent.
I'm not a fan. Overall, in Formula
One,
no.
never lower than 13th. We're talking about Carlos Sainz there not being consistent. That's a consistent mid-car driver, is it not?
I mean, yeah, you can't really compare him to Seb yet because Seb's only had 2 races. You know, he missed the first 2 races with COVID, and Australia with Seb was absolutely terrible. But I suppose you can sort of excuse it a little bit, given the circumstances. Now, Lance Stroll, to be fair, he is largely kept out of trouble, apart from that stupid incident with Latifi in qualifying in Australia. He's largely kept himself out of trouble. The Aston hasn't been a great car this year. Coming into Imola, they were the only team to not score a point. Mm-hmm. Now they've jumped above Williams and pushed Williams down to last. So thanks, guys, for that. I don't know. To be fair, I can't really fault him. Apart from that incident with Latifi, he's kept his nose clean. He's done a good job. And he fought well yesterday. He got a point for Aston. Obviously, Neil will discuss Seb. So it's one of his better weekends, I suppose, in a car that is, I think, quite clearly still towards the back of the field and does still need quite a bit of work on it because they're not going to have that sort of result every time.
Okay. So, Sebastian Vettel then, Neil?
Yeah. On the whole this season, as Steve has mentioned, he's only just really getting up to stride. He's been away at the start with COVID and the car's terrible anyway. But Stroll has, on the whole, been a better in that car. I think Seb is the better driver out of the two still. Stroll's just doing what he does. He's bang average, really. He can do okay things, but he's got the mistakes in him. He'll just end up hitting someone or just, being part of an incident in which you just generally don't get with Seb.
See, that's the thing. I mean, with Stroll, that incident in qualifying was just ridiculous. Just pulled back right in front of Latifi, didn't check his mirrors. But he got pole, was it 2020 in Turkey, just out of nowhere. No one expected him, and just bang, pole position out of nowhere. He got a podium in his first season in Williams, and that wasn't a particularly great car, and he was very comparable to Felipe Massa that year. And he'll have solid races like this, but then he'll go and do something completely Lance Stroll-esque, and everyone's like, oh yeah, okay. See, why can't he be quick, dependable Lance Stroll all the time? Why has he got to go back to amateur Lance Stroll?
Because he's a mid-car driver. He is what he is at this point, isn't he not? Where he's good, he's bad, he's indifferent, but he's consistently good, bad, or indifferent. I think he's a consistent driver for a mid-car team.
Not on the whole.
Leading driver. No?
Not on the whole. Because you get drivers in midfield cars almost throughout their entire Formula One careers. Nico Hülkenberg, for example, was in a midfield car basically his entire F1 career. I think the chance of him coming back with the top team now pretty much gone. But it's a shame he never made the podium. But he was always very consistent and very quick and dependable, which is why people are still calling on him now as and when they need him to step in. Obviously with Seb, for example. So I don't think it's that. I think he is just very inconsistent and he'll just switch off. He'll just have, in qualifying in Melbourne, just switched off and ended up causing a massive shunt. But then he'll go next week and put it on pole position. He's so inconsistent, but it's entertaining. It's entertaining.
If we're going to mention the Aston before we come to Ian Barron's fantastic question, thanks for posting it, Ian. Alpine, their point scoring run in 2022 came to an end. How did you see their race this weekend for Alpine, Neil?
Well, poor old Alonso. Mick just lost it. It was interesting conditions, and I guess it was just his inexperience. That is one thing that I'm really noticing this season. Magnussen is really showing him up, and I almost wonder if they kept Magnussen and Grosjean for last season, if they wouldn't have been behind the Williams.
Yeah, possibly.
But as I was saying, yeah, Alonso, unlucky with that. He didn't deserve it at all. And Ocon's been driving fairly well. Yeah, like some of the others, a little bit like Stroll. He's not my favourite driver in the world.
Mm.
He's got a bit to do to prove to me that he's really worthy.
Mm.
When do we stop making some excuses for Mick Schumacher, Steve? Because the only driver without any points other than him is Latifi. He's being constantly outpaced by Magnussen.
Mm.
This is not a good year for him.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you could excuse it last year because he was a rookie. The only person you could compare him to was Nikita Mazepin, and they had such a god-awful car. They were only going to be fighting at the back of the grid. Now, Magnussen, he's been, fourth on the grid after the sprint, or for the sprint race, sorry. More points. Yeah, he's got some good points this year, Magnussen. He is showing him up. You can't use the rookie excuse now. Because Mick Schumacher is now not a rookie. His second season of Formula One. And historically, he's taken a year to get into that series. So Formula 2, for example, took like a building year. So this year should really be a year he starts to make himself known. But I wonder if it could be next year, because last year he had such a terrible car. This year, it's the first time he's driven one of these proper cars in anger. He can get used to this one. And it's a lot different to the car he was driving last year. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I'm worried because I really wanted to see him push forward and score some points.
But then this is Magnussen who had a year out, Neil. If he didn't have would there be a next year for somebody else other than Mick Schumacher? Because it hasn't been a good year this year or the first year.
I think for the likes of Giovinazzi, had quite a long stint, even though he was quite an average driver. I think Mick is getting as much of a chance without being unfair to him and saying it's purely name that's keeping him there. I believe he's getting a similar chance to Giovinazzi, and it might be slightly longer than he's going to deserve if he carries on at this rate. He really does need to step it up and show that he deserves that seat, especially considering there's a young driver waiting in the wings. Who's not got a drive this season.
Okay, as we come towards the end of the show, let's go to the title. It's hotting up because despite it being a home race 2.0 for Ferrari, it was a massive disappointment, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to say, because we're going to come to Ian's question quickly as well.
Oh, sorry, yes, go on.
It is a strange one. It's a very strange season so far when you compare this year to last year. Mercedes far down the order. McLaren, very strange in terms of form. They're finally finding it. Ferrari, suddenly top of the world. And Verstappen lapping Hamilton. So a very, very strange. If you'd have said 12 months ago, this is what's going to happen next year, I wouldn't have believed you, because this is just insane. But it's brilliant. I'm loving every second of it so far. Not just because Charles Leclerc's up there winning races, apart from yesterday. Coming to yesterday, you'd have thought that everything going their way, it's almost their home Grand Prix. It would have been a 1-2 finish, and that would have been insane. But it was just for the wrong team. Such a shame for Charles Leclerc. He was doing so well, and a very uncharacteristic error. But too quick into the chicane, tried to cut it to save a bit or to slow the car down. Ended up taking off, spinning, barrier. Very lucky not to damage anything more serious than he did. Obviously broke his front wing. And he drops to 6th. So what could have been a fantastic weekend for the Tifosi ended up in a DNF and a 6th place.
Metal Jace, Neil.
Closed it all up.
Sorry, Steve. Metal Jace, I'm surprised Ferrari didn't leave Leclerc out for one lap.
Which bit was he meaning? To go for the fastest lap, or was he actually meaning to see if he lost downforce from his front wing? Because some people were saying that he didn't need to come in for a nose change.
What did you think?
Damage on the front wing in history, you always needed to pit because you just lost so much downforce. Mm-hmm. But as most of it's supposed to be made on the ground effect, this season could have been different. You don't know. There's people that are more got more experience in these matters were saying that he should have stayed out. So I can only but believe at this stage, without seeing it, that they could have had a point.
Yeah. At this point of the campaign, with Charles on 86, Max on 59, and Sergio on 54, George on 49. If you had to be a betting man at this point, Broken Wing says Metal Jace. If you were a betting man at this point, who's your money on the title going to, Steve? At this point,
it's still Charles.
Yeah, still Charles.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't think Red Bull can work through their kinks.
As long as Charles doesn't keep doing these little things, it's his.
See, Charles is in a position I was worried about last year with Verstappen. You know, suddenly Verstappen is the defender, and it's Charles who's fighting for his first title. So, you know, Max made a few errors last year. He was fighting for his first one, and suddenly it's a whole different environment. You know, the old title contender is fighting further back. This is between a young defending world champion who wants a second and a young guy who wants his first. So just keep the mistakes to a minimum. Red Bull will sort out their reliability problems. I have no doubt about that. This is Red Bull. They've been around there a long time. Yeah, it's just Charles needs to keep his nose clean, keep his car facing the right direction. And they need some backup from Sainz now, because Red Bull are very close in the constructors. Perez is very consistent this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll close
there. We'll look at because there's no race next weekend, is there? This Sunday coming, because we're off to America. We're off to America now, aren't we? So
yeah, next race is the 6th to the 8th in Miami.
So on the Monday, the 2nd of May, we will look at that race then. So that's next Monday. Join us at 7:15. To close, I thought I'd show you and share with you a little graphic that might make Steve just smile a little bit. After 4 races, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton.
That's my boy. You know, I can forgive him for leaving Williams. It hurts. It still hurts, but
that is quite the graphic, though, isn't it? When you see it like that, how the starts have been so polar opposites.
Surprising, because it was Hamilton with the upper hand. Obviously, like I say earlier, he was quite fortuitous in Bahrain with that Red Bull DNF, but since then he's been out in Q2, as has George, but Hamilton's been out in Q1, and he made no progress yesterday. So it's intriguing. This is going to be a very, very good fight throughout the course of the year, and it is going to ebb and flow. There's going to be races where Hamilton's got the strength, races where Russell's got the strength. Of all the battles up and down the grid in terms of teammates, this is the one I want to watch the most, because it's going to be brilliant.
Absolutely. There we go. Neil, we'll let you de-stress from work. Steve, thank you as always. Thank you for joining me, Neil. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next Monday, 7:15.